All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, owner of Play in School, Rich Prado. Today we're heading out to the West Coast to talk with Chris Bodishbaugh, owner, founder, one of the owners of Alpha Movement Baseball. Now, have to admit, this is Chris and I's first phone call, first talk ever. And so I'm going to be kind of on the edge of my seat learning about Chris and learning about Alpha along with the listeners at home. So, Chris, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be on and talk about Alpha and kind of all things travel ball with you.
So this is one of these clubs where I live in this travel ball world on Twitter and on the social medias, and I follow just about everybody. And this is one of those clubs I've been following for a long time. I recognize the logo. I recognize the name. I don't know anything about it. So don't take that the wrong way. There's just a lot of you guys, and so I am anxious. Before we learn about Alpha and how you guys came to be, just give us the quick story on your journey in baseball and how you got to Alpha.
Yeah, I mean, I've played obviously growing up in Northern California is where I'm from. Born and raised up here. Played multiple sports growing up and just kind of ended up taking to baseball after high school. Played in college and then played 10 years professionally, kind of Marlins and White Sox and independent ball and things like that. And retired in 2016 and started coaching. At that point, I was helping out at a junior college in Pittsburgh, California, called Los Medanos Junior College, where I played out for a little bit, and helping with a travel team. Really good, got really fortunate with a good young group of kids. We had team combat for a couple years, and then that turned into a team Apo Taco, and those guys kind of, they shifted into the high school space. That's where Alpha was created, along with myself and Adam Farb, who owns and runs NCTB Baseball, which is a travel tournament organization in Northern California, and Eric Wadley, who's the owner of Kinetic Performance Institute in Morgan Hill.
Which maybe has something to do with the movement part of the name Alpha Movement, I'm guessing. But we'll get to that in a second. You glazed over your career really quick. I want to take a dive back. Were you played college baseball? Is that what you just said?
I did, yeah. I played at actually played college football first. I played football at San Jose State. Got hurt and went to junior college to play baseball for 2 years, and then transferred from there to Chico State University in 2007, and then I signed that year. So I played 2 years of junior college baseball and then 1 year of Division II baseball before I signed professionally.
Oh, this is very interesting. So football player turns into draft pick in less than 3 years or 4 years. What position did you play in football?
I was a quarterback in football. I was actually drafted in baseball out of high school as well. It just wasn't, to be honest, I just didn't like it. It wasn't, as a football guy, baseball was a very slow sport for me. So it wasn't something that intrigued me at all until it was my only choice.
Yeah, that's impressive. So I'm curious, what was the injury that ended the football stuff, but still allowed you to play baseball?
A lot of knocks to the melon.
Quite
a few, to the point where it just wasn't really sustainable anymore for me.
Yeah, I almost feel bad. I could have. I should have been able to predict that. Maybe a couple too many knocks to my melon prevented me from being able to come to that conclusion quick enough. Probably a smart choice. So you end up playing. You go JUCO route, D2 route. Into the draft, or were you a free agent signed after the draft?
I was drafted in 2003 out of high school for the first time, and then again in 2005. and then I ended up signing the following year as a draft and follow.
Okay.
With the Marlins.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's cool. And then you managed to make a living out of that for a decade. Pretty impressive. No matter regardless of the outcomes, that alone is, I think, a decade working any job. I don't care if it's in baseball or not. A decade is something to be proud of.
I wouldn't have traded it for the world. I mean, there's a lot along the way, and obviously we all know the kind of growing movement towards minor league baseball players and helping them improve their lifestyle and their pay. So it definitely wasn't easy by any means, but I mean, you get to play baseball every day, so it wasn't hard either.
Yeah, small. It's a pretty small club. It's a pretty small club. It almost feels like right now in 2022, there's so much support and investment at the college level, even at mid-majors, where if you do a kind of like compare and contrast, some of these players would almost prefer to stay in college just from hey, well, I'm getting pretty pampered here. And you can,
100%. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
You don't have to share an apartment with 7 other dudes, right? You get just the creme de la creme from like training. You get tremendous. You get meals that are just like top notch. You get a lot of times these even mid majors are flying across the country, like a lot of creature comforts that might not be available to some young guy in in A ball, for example.
Totally. And I think what a lot of people, with minor leaguers understand is like some of them get big bonuses, some of them get very little or no bonuses, but even the guys with the bigger ones, like they're investing a lot of that money back into themselves, over the course of their minor league career, whether it be with training or food or living conditions, like that gets kind of dumped right back into you
right.
as a player. Because your body is what you have and you got to take care of it. And the guys that don't get those bonuses and things like that, they're having to grind to work to pay for those extra things, the extra training or the extra, even the gym membership, right? Like that's tough on what a minor leaguer makes.
Correct.
So it's definitely hard, and being at some of these college programs is definitely I would say a more beneficial lifestyle to improving upon being a player.
And and I don't want to belabor this part of the conversation. I want to talk about alpha movement, but if you think about a kid who, you could sign real low for no money out of high school, or you could go to this, this pretty decent mid-major or better where you're going to get pampered. Your opportunity to just develop, get bigger, faster, stronger seems like a pretty good choice right now is college. Now, of course, there's risk involved. You could get hurt, whatever, and the pro opportunity may not come around again. But all things created equal, there's definitely a segment of the population looking at college as the number one track.
Well, and what we do know, right, is once you take the pro opportunity, the college opportunity is definitely not coming around again.
Correct. Yeah, 100%. So in our text, in texting back and forth with you, you told me that you guys got this thing going, what was it, just before COVID? Give me the timeline as to when you guys founded Alpha Movement and sort of how the three of you guys came to get this going. With, you said it was Oppo, Taco, and Team Combat. Basically, we're aging up, and you.
Yeah.
Is that give me the walkthrough on the timeline again on that.
So for me, like Oppo, Taco, and Team Combat was just a team. We weren't really an organization. We didn't have multiple teams. It was just a team that I started coaching when I stopped playing, and they were aging up and getting into the high school space. And because we had a lot of good players on the team at the time, there was a lot of other local organizations that were trying to get us to merge in with them. And for me, it just wasn't something that I felt was best for the guys. I had been around for a while, and I had a good relationship with Adam Farb, and at the time they weren't doing teams. Literally though, we were out at Stanford University one day. We were running an event together, and Adam was like, "Hey, let's do it. Let's start this." And I think where the other people came in is with Eric Wadley is Adam just wanted good people involved. So one of his first calls was to Eric Wadley, and with his relationships up here in Northern California, he tried to get other programs. So what our original kind of vision was, and it's still to this day, is having other local programs. Kind of, they're keeping their spaces and their teams. And Eric Wadley runs Dub Baseball and KPI. We had Lance Franks involved, who runs the Chico Aces. Alpha was kind of a combination of everybody coming together and trying to create a good high school space for these guys to play, and to use all of our connections together in order to get a hold of college coaches and get these guys to the right events and things like that. Basically just use the community that we have built and the relationships we have built to come together and create something good for the kids.
And so you make this thing official in 2019, and you're like feeling good. And then all of a sudden, spring of 2020, the whole world crashes. And to add insult to injury, you're in California. So life's even, let's just say more different. So this is like literally you're like 6 months in, 12 months in. What was the vibe like, come, spring of 2020, as far as like, what are you feeling about the club?
It was hard because we'd been really excited about the rosters we have built at multiple age groups, and the kids that have come together and wanted to play together again. They had played together, most of them previously. Adam with NCTV runs an event up here called The League, which is about the top 50 or 55 eighth graders that try out are selected and split up on 4 teams, and they play against each other over the course of 5 weekends. So most of these guys were in that. So they enjoy their experience in that. It's a really fun event. They kind of build some bonds, and now that they got a chance to play together, they were really excited to do it. And then it got put on hold, and all of our big plans and big events that we had were getting canceled. Our first event was actually a event in Utah, and Adam and I found it and literally decided to go about 2 days before the event started. It was Pathway Baseball in Utah. There was one of the only people running, and we jumped into that tournament 2 days before it started.
My man Gino running it, Pathway. Yeah. I love Gino.
Gino crushed it for us those first 2 summers, man. We really enjoyed his events. They did an awesome job. First class in everything that we went to. They took really good care of the teams and the players. They had great coverage. I think they're a very good growing tournament organization and doing a heck of a job.
Just to repeat, if you guys don't know, Gino Grasso, Triple Crown Baseball sort of rebranded the older age groups into Pathway Baseball, and Gino's sort of like the head man with Pathway. And you're right, they they run these events. First of all, they're different because they don't run a million events, and they don't have a million teams in those events, which is it's a novel concept to have fewer events with fewer teams. And he does it really is like every time you go to one of the events, they're just real classy. Like the whole thing about it, I love. It just feels a little bit different than sort of like the standard, regional or national level event that you normally go to. It just has a little bit different vibe to it. Anyway, so congrats to
they make every team feel like they're important.
Nice.
And I think that's a really important concept. They did a really good job of that. I mean, we had multiple teams in it, and every team got treated the same and communicated with, and they communicated with the coaches really well, and it was awesome.
So they were running something in a state that basically was like, hey, come here and do your thing, and y'all found an open spot and ran out there immediately and got going. That was probably, if I had to take a guess, what was that, July 2020 maybe, or June, or was it June?
Yeah, it was July. Yeah, and that was our first event. We took a couple teams out there and played well, and then we took a couple more back for an event later in the summer, and then things finally started kind of opening up a little bit in California, and we were able to do a bunch of different scrimmages and things like that to get the guys reps, and then finally things really opened up, and we were able to kind of get back to a somewhat normal summer last summer. Mm-hmm. Still a little bit different, but a somewhat normal summer. We had to deal with the COVID issues a little bit, but this summer has been our first, I would say, summer that has been on schedule and on plan, and it's gone really well.
Yeah. Before we sort of turn the page too much on this, I got to ask, this Oppo Taco, I'm hoping the taco was the logo of this team, and if the taco, it was the logo, and there's an old T-shirt laying around that's like a size large or extra large, I know a guy who might be interested. So I'm just saying.
Oppo Taco is actually a Canadian brand. Which one of my friends? Yeah, there's a whole brand. If you go look up Oppo Taco, clothing brand. I actually haven't looked them up in a while, but I got in contact with them, and they kind of gave us a little mini sponsorship, and we were Team Oppo Taco. So
that's amazing.
They did an awesome job with the uniforms. Really cool colors and schemes, and the boys looked great, and they obviously really enjoy that at that age.
Well, I've looked it up, oppotaco.com. Maybe they'll sponsor this episode of the podcast, because their stuff is pretty cool. I've never heard of these guys.
Really cool.
Yeah, this is like sort of in the genre of like baseball lifestyle merch, There's a handful of those. I would say probably the one that comes to mind that probably has separated itself from everybody is Baseballism. I'm sure you've heard of those guys.
Oh yeah.
But these guys are sort of reminiscent of that. And this Oppo Taco idea is pretty good. I dig it. That's hilarious. Yep. You're gonna have to reach out to that guy and tell him we just spent 5 minutes talking about oppotaco.com.
He'll love it.
He will love it. That's pretty cool. So you guys get going. You got Oppo Taco. You got Team Combat. You kind of merge forces. You create Alpha Movement based out of your other buddy's place, and you go from like 2019 to 2022. Tell me about, did you stick with just that one team? Has there been growth? What have y'all done as far as like, as that's concerned?
We've just created teams at every age group. Originally we had created 2 teams at every age group, which we still have. We have Prime and Power. So the first year would have been 2023s and 2022s. That's what we had, was 2023 grads and 2022 grads. And then the next year we were into 2024. So we had 24s, 23s, and 22s. And now this year we just age up. We have a freshman team, a sophomore team, and a junior team, 2 teams at each age group.
So it looks like, I don't know how up to date the website is. I just went on there and clicked on teams, and you've got, so it looks like, 23s, 4s, 5, and 126 team is listed. But I also see, now you guys are based in NorCal. Most of your kids are from NorCal, I'm assuming. But now I see there is looks like a 2023 SoCal club. I'm assuming, I'll just take a stab in the dark here, that was an established club who you guys were friendly with and wanted to come underneath y'all's banner? Or did you guys run down there and run tryouts?
No. So actually we wasn't a team. Tate Caraway is a guy in Southern California for us who we got involved, and we added a Southern California team. And our teams have kind of started to become a little bit more, I don't want to say national, but West Coast based. So like my 23 team that I coach with Eric Wadley, we have 3 guys from Arizona, 4 from Southern California, and the rest are from Northern California. But for the most part, all of our players are up in Northern California and SoCal combined. So our SoCal team is just SoCal guys. They were just a group of guys that Alpha kind of started, and we ran a tryout down there, and a group of really good players showed up, and Tate kind of wanted to run with it and has ran our SoCal team down there.
Maybe like a decade ago, I would have said, man, having these guys from all over the place is I don't know if it's worth it. A decade later, today in 2022, gosh, it almost doesn't really matter because you have to travel almost every weekend anyway. So it doesn't matter if I live in Richmond, Virginia. If every guy lives in Richmond, Virginia, guess what? This coming weekend, you still got to get in the car and drive 2 hours or 5 hours or get in a plane and fly 10 hours away. Like, so what's the difference? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's I guess the difference, and everyone will argue how do you really develop guys and help them grow as players without practices and things like that. And it's hard. That's a constant battle. And what we envision to start with is what everybody does is, hey, we're going to be able to do a lot of practices and help these guys get better. And over the course of the summer, I think that we've come to found, like other people in the past, it's just not that possible. So one of the ways that we help our guys develop is because Eric owns Kinetic Performance Institute, they do a really good job with remote training. Mm-hmm. So our guys that aren't up in Northern California and can't physically get into the facility, a lot of them train remotely that are in the Alpha program. And Eric takes good care of the guys that are in Alpha and helps them grow as players. And their facility is as good as it gets. Everything tech-based that you could possibly imagine in the baseball world they use and help players both grow physically and, from the weight room standpoint, and then also they're growing their skills as baseball players as well.
Yeah, there's such a fine line to you sort of like to thread this needle between the team development concept versus the individual development concept. And, at the end of the day, I mean, obviously there's a team dynamic that is arguably maybe it separates the champion from the runner-up, okay?
Sure.
Because talent's going to be there. Talent's almost equal. And this team dynamic is, it can win and lose ball games at times. You see it in such, in certain circumstances, right? That bunt that gets blown on defense, whatever. But but then if you zoom out a little bit more, it really is this like weird thing where baseball is it's an individual pursuit. It's an individual game where you have a bunch of guys around you. Like nobody's going to help you swing the bat. Nobody helps you field the ground ball. It's you versus the ball. It's you versus the pitcher.
We see at the younger levels too. Yeah, I mean it's hard to play that type of a game when you're out trying to get schools to see these guys and things like that. So like I love that part of the game, being a college guy and being able to hit and run and do all these things, and we do it. And I think we probably do it more at the older age groups once, a lot of our guys have committed to schools and things like that. Because it's easier to take the bat out of their hand, right? It's but when you got a freshman or sophomore kid who's there and a school's there to see him, and it's like, do I really want to give this guy sack bunt right now? Or he could barrel up and do himself some good, right?
Yeah, you're not going to be throwing on a lot of takes during a kid's AB when people are going to be there to see him. But yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to manage the game aspect and that aspect at the same time. And I think you're able to kind of pick and choose what your priorities are in different moments over the course of the summer.
Yeah. To connect the dots in my just like in my rambling and just my mind bouncing all over the place. My point, I think, in my head was that it is an individual pursuit where if you're not at home taking care of your own development, you can be at a field by yourself with dad, with mom, with your brother, with your friend, and still develop. You don't need 50 guys around you to develop. You can do those things on your own. And if you're not doing those things on your own, you're going to get left behind. If you're not taking the reps offensively, if you're not taking the reps defensively on your own, you're not a guy anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
you're not.
So
you're not.
I don't know. Listen, I totally understand the clubs who want everybody there. I get it, and it's awesome if it can happen, but it's just not realistic for every club everywhere.
Nope.
So that's cool. So where what is sort of like y'all's schedule right now as far as like what are the events that a club from Northern California is doing? Are you guys locked in and trying to like market your guys to NorCal and Pacific Northwest clubs where you can stay close to home, or are you guys getting on a plane and flying to Texas, flying to Atlanta, flying to Florida? Like what's y'all's approach right now for summer 2022?
Honestly, it's just to play in the best events that we can get the guys in, regardless of geographic location. I think we've kind of taken our teams and the way that we have separated them. It's kind of like, hey, this guy has a chance to maybe be a player that wants to go to the SEC. So like, let's get that guy out to the South, right? That's something that's in his goals. Let's find a way to get him to a tournament there. So maybe we have a team that goes there and plays in a tournament. We have teams that kind of stay in the West Coast mainly. For my 23 team that I coach with Eric, we started off the summer with a really tough 3-week push. We were at Lake Point for the PBR National Invitational, and then we went straight from there and drove to Cary for USA Team Championships East, and then flew to the West Coast down in Southern California and played in the UBC West.
Holy cow.
So yeah, it was a tough 3-week stretch, but I think the thing that we learned over the first 2 years is this junior group, they have so much stuff to do individually that they want to attend between PG National and the PDP League and team trials and, trying to make the All-American game, that we decided to front load the schedule so that once we got up against that stuff, we weren't competing and having to fill different things. It's like, hey guys, we're going to go play hard for 3 weeks, and then we're going to cut you guys loose so that you can go do all of your other stuff. And it was a very tough 3 weeks, but I think it's been very beneficial for our guys because they've gotten some rest before some of these individual events and things like that. So I think we kind of have the schedule figured out for this age group. For our other age groups, they do a lot. We'll have a team in the WWBA 16U next week. We've sent a couple teams down to Arizona for the USA Team Championships West. We even had an event that Adam ran up in at the Field of Dreams in Iowa, the Field of Dreams Invitational. So that was a really fun event for our 24s. They got to go do that, and they played against the Knights Premier for a 3-game series, 9 innings each game, and at the Field of Dreams, and they had a blast. And
that's NCTB. You were talking about they ran that event.
So Adam kind of put it together up there, and it was sanctioned under Perfect Game.
Got it.
So they had the diamond casts and stuff like that. So
gotcha.
That was pretty cool event, and pretty cool experience for those guys to get to go do.
I'm on that website, by the way. If anybody's looking, that's playnctb.com, and probably would be a halfway decent time to mention that Alpha Movement BB over on Twitter, Alpha Movement BB, and you can go over to alphabaseballclub.com to track down Chris and see what see what Alpha Movement's up to. I probably should have mentioned that maybe in the first 30 seconds of the call, but heck, things are work in progress over here.
That's right.
So I always like to try and get people's different takes on the same questions. once we've gotten a little bit of background on on the club and on the guest each week. So I think I sent you some questions. Did you see those the other day when I sent them to you?
I did. I looked at them for a minute, but I don't remember them.
That's all right.
I'll be good with it.
Try and wing it. Let me ask you, because I know we have a drop dead time here in a few minutes. What time do you have to go, or how much time do you still have left with me?
Oh, we'll be fine. I got some time.
Okay. All right. So first question I like to ask people, and I kind of changed how I asked it. It used to be just like, what book? But then I realized I don't read that much right now in this season of life, because I got a 6-year-old and he doesn't really let me sit still long enough to to sit and read a full book. So I adjusted the question. It's more like, hey, what resource, what book, movie, website, what resource do you think all coaches should be checking out? What would you recommend to a coach if he popped up and said, hey, where can I go learn something from somebody?
I mean, obviously, with what we have going on in the world today, there's an endless amount of information out there. So I think for not just coaches but players, take it all in. Go on different Instagram pages. It doesn't mean that you have to do it all or it's all right for you, but there's no harm in learning it. But for me, like my go-to book is Mind Gym, which is incredible.
Mind Gem, GEM?
Mind Gym, MINDGYM.
GYM, okay. Cool.
So I kind of figured out early on as a coach, with some young guys, at times you're almost more of a psychologist than a baseball coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think helping these guys through this world on the mental side is really important, giving them tools to be able to deal with the distractions and the things that come up, and really just continue to learn how to enjoy being a kid and playing baseball and separate yourself from everything else at times is really important. So Mind Gym was great for me as a player, being able to understand what matters and what to focus on a day-to-day basis and how to stay consistent and be in a routine and all of those different things. So I think that would be my one book, but I think overall using all your resources that you can, whether it be YouTube, Instagram, websites, books, podcasts, all of it to gain as much information as you can and figure out what works best for you.
Mind Gym, An Athlete's Guide to Inner Excellence by Gary Mack. I'm seeing it on Amazon used for $3.75. If anybody's listening to this right now, go buy it. Costs you less than $4. Check it out. Sounds like a pretty good one. Where was I here? I'm looking for my next question. I'm gonna skip that one. Let's go over here to the next one. I think this is going to be a question that you're going to be able to speak to, because you're sort of less than a couple years into this thing with Alpha Movement. What's the one piece of advice you'd give someone that's just starting a travel team or even opening up a facility? So somebody who's literally just about to get going. What do you tell this person?
Keep it small.
Yeah.
I've kind of gone to I really believe in the Jerry Maguire type approach, right? It's less clients, more engagement with them. I think that there's been a couple different times where I've kind of taken on a little bit too much, and I felt like my attention was spread too thin, and I didn't do as good of a job. So I think less teams. And realistically, at the end of the day, you should only do as much as you have help for, because you're only as good as a coach as your help. The assistants, the people that are around you, the people that are also coaching the kids. If you don't have good coaches around you, then you're not going to do a very good job. So I think the answer to that would be do as much as you have quality coaches for. And for the most part, for a lot of people in their areas, there's not a a ton of really, really good coaches around them. So they may just want to keep it small, the 2 or 3 teams or 1 or 2 teams at first.
Yeah, it is such great advice. Keep it small. You see so many people who really buy into they think that bigger is better. And, what they fail to understand is your quality control goes away when you get bigger. Your expenses go up when you get bigger. Your opportunity for your reputation to go down multiplies when you get bigger. I love that.
Yep.
I love that piece of advice.
The engagement with your players too. I mean, the relationship building is such a huge part of being a coach, and obviously, the more players you have, the less time you have to spend with each individual. So I think kind of navigating that world and being able to spend as much time learning, not just with your players on the field, but learning about them off the field and understanding who they are as people and what their goals are and who their families are and all of those different things. It only helps you get more and more out of that player. I think when you're able to have enough time to show that you care about those things, most of these guys will run through a wall for you.
Love it. Let me ask you one last question here, which usually kind of opens up a few more questions depending on the direction we go with this thing. But what's one change, if I gave you a magic wand, what's one change that could be made to travel baseball that would have the biggest positive impact on everything that we're doing here with travel ball?
Man, as coaches, we obviously kick around these things all the time, right? I think there's a couple different avenues. I mean, one thing, I think we've got some crazy thoughts. Jim and Adam, Jim Sammons, who helps with NCTB as well, and Adam and I have talked a lot about different rules changes and things like that could make it better. I always think that the stealing at a really young age really prevents guys from learning the game because it kind of just ends up being a merry-go-round. Mm-hmm. So we've kicked around ideas of, hey, can guys lead off but not steal? And, that keeps the double play in order and it makes guys play the game a little bit more. Adam and I have talked about, hey, at the really young ages, right, we have smaller bases, smaller fields, smaller bats. Would a smaller ball possibly decrease arm injuries, right? A lighter ball, right? So I think there's a lot of things from a rules standpoint that you could kind of tinker with, and I don't know if they'd be good or not. As far as like travel baseball itself, I know a lot of people think that there's something wrong with it. I don't. I think we're in a good place. I mean, I really enjoy what I do. I know the kids that I'm around really enjoy what they do. The coaches enjoy going to the tournaments. I think the events that we go to are as well ran and as well covered as they've ever been. I think that there's a lot of distractions out there that you can't eliminate, but I think at times makes people upset with where travel baseball is. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's in a great place right now.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't ask that question as some kind of weird gotcha. It's like we're all sort of in this space, and I'm always thinking like, how do you even things that you like, you can still improve upon. But I like your ideas for those lower age groups, man. And I've seen guys talking about the baseball specifically a lot recently. It really is kind of bizarre to think about, like, what other sport doesn't use a smaller ball or like age appropriate equipment? Like every other sport does. They use smaller soccer balls, smaller basketballs. It really is kind of mind-boggling that we're not using a smaller, lighter baseball that fits a little person's hand, right?
Totally. I mean, softball does it too, right? They have smaller balls that people graduate up to the bigger ball, and you see a lot of young kids pick up a baseball and they'll say, "Oh man, he doesn't know how to throw." It's like, well, he does know how to throw. That's what he has to do to.
Yeah, they can't hold it.
They can't hold it. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do at the youth level to maybe improve that game in general. Travel baseball, I love the smaller tournaments. I think, like we said with Pathway, we just did Cary in USA, which was only 16 teams. I love that aspect of it, that every single game was against a very good team and was very tough. So I think those smaller invitational tournaments that aren't so drug out are kind of my cup of tea that we enjoy more than anything else.
That parallels perfectly with what you just said about stay small, bigger's not better. And we do see these events with 300, 400 teams in them. And listen, cool, if you got a chance to go win it, cool, that's awesome. But most don't. And the experience at an event with 16 teams or 8 teams is incredible. It's a totally different vibe. So yeah, I'm with you. And listen, you can go to 32, cool, but that's really different than 320.
Yeah, well, we've done them all,
of course,
and I enjoy the environments around some of those huge tournaments. Like it's electric. The environment is amazing. It's just at times when you have so many, some of the games aren't necessarily competitive, and we've been on both ends of them. So,
of course.
I think the more competitive games and the tighter games that you can get your guys involved in, the more they grow as players.
Yeah, great. I agree. I've said many times on this podcast, on the record, that take 300 teams to the event, sure, but split it into 3 or 4 divisions so that now you have 3 or 4 separate championships running simultaneously. And the obvious problem is the team that's in the D bracket is going to probably maybe be a little bit upset that they're not in the A bracket. So that's an obvious reason why they haven't made that switch up to this point with those big events. But man,
there's not a perfect science to this either, right? I mean, I think we've all there's 2 avenues, right? There's the money side of it, which people are making a living, and this is a business and things like that, and they're making the right business decisions. They don't always necessarily go with what's right for baseball at the time, but I still understand why they do it.
Of course. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Chris. I'm glad we connected and we're able to put this together. Yeah, do you have any sort of parting shots, any last words of wisdom you want to share with any coaches or parents or players that might still be listening to us?
Man, I think what you and I kind of talked about earlier with the recruiting side, I think that's obviously the biggest thing as guys go up and they deal with, figuring out where to go to school and how to get in touch with the right places and things like that. And it's use every avenue, and there's a lot of schools out there. There is a school for everyone. I think coaching in junior college for 10 years, I realized that there's guys that kind of hang it up too early. Now, you may have to end up going to the middle of nowhere and playing at what you consider is a small school, but there is a school for everyone to go to. So as you navigate that world, just make sure that you're ending up at the right place, the right fit for you from both an academic and skill level that allows you to get on the field and continue to chase your dream.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on and sort of catching us up on what alpha movement's all about. I think it's I dig it. I dig what you guys are doing. So appreciate you coming on. Hang on one more second. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm not going to hang up. Hang on one more second.
All right.